Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. This is CFL's first webinar series, so we are very excited to do this. And theme today is child-centered education. I'll just introduce myself. I'm Venkatesh. I'm a teacher at CFL. On my right is my colleague Kamla, and on my left is my colleague Ridhan. And we will be with you on the webinar today. So just to quickly go through the format, what we'll do is that we'll share a video with you. This is a pre-recorded discussion between the three of us on the theme of child-centered education, and it's lightly scripted. And if for some reason you can't, if the streaming doesn't work, we'll share 2 YouTube links, and that has the same video, and you can watch that. After that, after that video, which is about 28 minutes long, then you can, as the video progresses, you can, if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat window to the host, and then we can take up those questions and have a, we can try to respond to your questions basically. And unfortunately, because of the number of participants, we won't take audio questions. We'll just take these chat questions, and as and when they come up, we'll respond to them. Yeah. Did I miss anything in that? Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So we can begin with watching the video then.
Venku,
yeah.
Sorry, just one quick check. Got a message that someone is unable to hear. Are we audible to everyone?
Write in chat if
if you just respond in chat, please.
What are the chat?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think most.
Okay, we are audible.
Audible?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Guru, you can share those links also in the YouTube, links in the chat. If people are finding it difficult to hear the video we're sharing right now.
Sure.
Okay, so like we had mentioned, today's webinar is about child-centered education, and so here I have worked in an alternative school for some time, and this is I've thought about this phrase. It's used often, child-centered education. So can we go into that? What could it mean? And yeah.
Sure. Let's actually first try to come up with different meanings. Like for instance, mainstream education relies on a national curriculum. Adult notions are at the center. The child is not at the center, right? So then maybe we'd have to flip this whole model around to make it child-centered. But what would that mean? That's one way of looking at it. Right?
Yeah, you could also argue that syllabi and certifications are all social inventions, and the problem is someone has come up with this and said it is important for the child. So the child is dragged through this whole process willy-nilly.
Yeah, so then what would it mean to keep the child at the center?
Yeah, so this is one meaning. Let's open up some more meanings.
Yeah.
What we feel others may define child-centered as, then we can slowly come to what we think, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought it means an individualized learning experience, right? Because after all, everyone is unique, abilities and skills are unique, and so it seems very unreasonable to work in a general way with all children. This may mean we need to vary the content and teaching style to suit each child.
Yeah, within the classroom, absolutely. And I could also think that children in differing contexts would have to have a different content, like what counts as valid knowledge will vary depending on the child's context. So child-centered in that way also. right?
Like an Adivasi child would benefit from a very different curriculum or even deliver in a different language
Yeah.
than a child from in a regular government school.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I was saying, so child-centered education could be children doing whatever they want, whenever they want, right? And so it's centered in that sense around their desires, inclinations, interests at that moment.
Okay, so this is now a new idea you're saying. Child-centered would mean centered around what they feel like doing in the moment. Another could be centered around their interests, not of the moment, but something more lasting. Like suppose a child shows a spark, a particular talent, right? And the adults would then say, what does it take to fulfill this potential or to help this child cultivate this, right? So then it could mean centered around their deeper, longer term interests.
Yeah.
That's also there.
Or it could mean making learning enjoyable for the child. So in that way, I like the phrase child-friendly more than child-centered. Child-centered has that feeling of it's all exclusively focused on a child. But child-friendly just means, okay, there is a curriculum to deliver. How can that child enjoy that curriculum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. So it looks like we have some definitions
Yeah.
now. Would be nice to go into them one by one. So can we talk about this letting the children do what they want, when they want, the so-called freedom model in some ways? And many schools have tried this, and I've heard they claim that there are good results. That it's a good model. So yeah, I'm a bit skeptical, but can we go into it?
Yeah. You know, if you think about it, I get why it's so attractive, right? At least in our milieu, wherever we go, we get life and experiences personalized for ourselves, no? And even my food is a la carte, it's buffet. So why wouldn't I want my child's education to be personalized for my child?
So this brings in choice. So child-centered, are we saying the child is able to choose?
Yeah, I mean, so choice would bring in a sense of autonomy, and then if they feel autonomous, they might be more engaged. Right? So I think we're saying that so choice could bring about motivation. It could bring about more engagement with what they're doing. Yeah, and I think maybe they would be in some schools like this. They would be very engaged, motivated with what they're doing
Because they chose.
Yeah.
I actually feel that the motivation is coming in those cases because of the illusion of a chooser.
Okay, so yeah, can you say more about that?
Yeah, in the sense that if I think of, let's say I offer children a choice when they come to me in a class. What is that choice actually going to be based on, right? We've all experienced it on the occasions when we do offer choice.
Right.
It's more based on some emotional state of willingness or readiness to engage. No? I don't feel that it is based on something core or deep. And also there are so many influences on that particular choice. There may be peers, there's the media and advertising, social norms, all kinds of weather, all kinds of things can influence the choice of the moment.
Right.
So I'm even not sure what I need to respect over there, right? I mean, and I can say as a teacher, okay, I'll remove my influence from this picture and then it'll be child-centered. But no, actually I'm opening the door wide open for just other influences.
Yeah.
So in that sense.
Yeah, I think when we talk about this model, it's important to question it in this way. It's very fundamental.
Yeah.
Right? Because parents are thinking about their children as mini choosers, and and that they believe their lives will be enhanced by their choices. Even this whole idea of autonomy, agency is built on choosing.
No, so just to add one thing, very nice question emerges from what you said. Is there an authentic chooser at all, free of all influences? But we can go into that at some future
You mean
date.
like if there were no influence, then it would be a true
good choice. Yeah, or a true choice. So to me, child-centered is not very interesting if it's just at the level of choice. The other idea you mentioned seems more promising, like helping the child realize her potential or fulfill something. So in such an education, on a day-to-day basis, from the child's point of view, there may not be much choice for the child, because we have as adults, we have said that we will help you fulfill your dream. So we will push along those lines. But it is child-centered in the sense that it is about the child, helping the child realize her dreams in the long run. And adults will push and adults will help this child achieve her dream.
I know I said this, but I'm just thinking, if you think of the vast goals of education, right? Like questioning aspects of society that disturb us, no? Like inequality, apathy, prejudice. And one of the goals of education surely is to question this and maybe even transform this. If I look at those goals, then what is this individual fulfillment got to do with that? It feels very narrow, no?
Yeah, but I mean, it seems like you're saying this kind of child-centered education is more like self-centered education. But it need not be so. Can we go a bit more into what Venkat was saying?
Okay, but I just want to say, I think I'm getting a feeling like I'm not alone in the universe, right? So how can what does it mean to be in the center? And if you look at children, we care for their well-being. Are we so sure that it is good for their well-being to be put at the center of some endeavor in this way? This is what we're talking about, this individual fulfillment. But we should go ahead with it.
I mean, but are we, when saying that, are we creating some kind of contradiction between a student pursuing her potential and the goal of education being challenging society, social norms, other aspects of human life, right? And so can't they both happen together? And like maybe when people pursue their own potential, they may come up with more creative solutions for for different problems in society. So that may also be possible. So they may not be contradictory aims.
So on the surface, it does seem I can follow my dream and I can help society. I can love cars and I can build better cars and so on. But I think we may be fooling ourselves in this. Like, it's a question of our attitude, right? If the whole attitude of education and social processes at large are geared towards self-fulfillment, then what does this whole so-called helping society mean anyway? And also, I think, can we question this notion of fulfillment itself? Like, there are a few very creative and hardworking people in society, and they make it big, and they are held up as like the idols for all our children to follow. I mean, what does it do to an ordinary child's psyche, to have to be told, follow your dreams, look at this person, you can be like him or her, or I wonder what it does to the child's psyche.
Actually, we were talking about this just the other day with some children. Now, I do feel maybe it's the benefit of hindsight. At my age, when I look back, whatever talent or abilities I had, I certainly enjoyed the activities that it allowed me to initially. But very quickly, it sets in this whole need to fulfill at that. Like, it's not enough to just have it and enjoy it. I have to do something with it, become somebody with it. Then comparison comes in. Then everyone around you is saying, why aren't you fulfilling it? I mean, actually, it seems a bit dark, but I feel like that it leads to a lifelong sense of incompleteness. I haven't done what I could have, right? I know this sounds dark, but I'm saying from hindsight, it really happens. And with the children I was talking to the other day, it's already happening. They're 12 and they're already feeling
I
this.
think we can all recognize.
Yeah.
What we have been saying is then challenging some important notions in today's educational world, right? Whether traditional or contemporary. That kind of the idea is to dream big, pursue your dreams, get all the awards there are to get, be better than the other. And I guess we are challenging that.
Yeah, I read a nice sentence the other day. We are practicing longing all the time. We are feeling empty. We are practicing longing and becoming fulfilled through that longing. But because we have practiced longing, when we get what we want, we will continue to long some more. So anyway, this whole follow your dreams and all that is only for a small minority of society who has the sort of social status and wealth to pursue their dreams. It's not even relevant for
The vast majority.
many people.
Yeah.
So I don't know how meaningful this whole thing is.
I don't know. I am reminded of something beautiful, that prose poem called Desiderata, which I read very, very long back. And one sentence there, it says, "You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here." That thing just has stayed with me. That
So it looks like something interesting is being suggested about the nature of individual fulfillment and what it does to the human being. But we may need one more webinar to go into all that. So we can, but I understand. I take your points. It looks like we are saying that child-centered education is not about individual choice and freedom for us, and nor is it about personal fulfillment in one's own life or in the larger social context. But now to go back to what Venkat was saying earlier, that to him child-centered education is about making learning possible and accessible for everyone or each and every child. So what could that mean?
he even said enjoyable, which sounds great, sounds wonderful, but I feel it's easier said than done. But I would like to go into this idea a lot.
No, I just meant that, in any classroom interaction, can I deliver content so that each and every child, no matter what her ability or is able to get something from it. Because if I don't come with that attitude, I'm just going to deliver my lecture and be done with it.
No, so then you're saying that if each child is to get something, you're implying that my expectations will differ for each child, and then I will assess each child's learning in an ongoing way, and I would define the content differently. The content I want to teach, I may define that, but I would teach it in different ways to each child, and and I must find a way to make it happen. So in this sense, it's a child-centered education. Focus on the child in this way.
Okay, just clarify one thing. Are you talking about learning styles? That whole thing about each child has their own learning style and then you have to match the instruction to that? Are you talking about that?
No,
because I don't believe in that. That's why.
Right. No, I don't think it's about learning style or teaching style. But maybe we could go a little bit into why you're skeptical about it.
No, it's just that research hasn't held up that notion that every child has a stable style of learning, and that your instruction, if you match to that, you would end up improving the learning. It just hasn't. There have been numerous theories, different kinds of learning styles, and measures have been made. Half the children can't be classified using these measures. That itself is a problem. And when you try to match instruction, it doesn't work. So it's just basically the lack of scientific evidence for it. That's all. Though it's a very appealing theory and people love it, but
so to just come back to how we can try that each child gets something in a classroom, we can use a variety of methods, I suppose, so that each child can tap into something.
Yeah.
Or we can just patiently repeat material which
Yeah.
does work well. And in our context, because we have small numbers in a classroom, repeating and being patient with the child and just seems to work in terms of their absorbing some of the content. Just to clarify that I'm not suggesting that it's the same degree that all children will understand the concept to the same degree. They won't.
Because they are different and their abilities
absolutely.
vary. But then what we're saying, that child-centered education means that knowledge and skills are made accessible to children.
Yeah.
And in this sense, we don't give up on a child's learning and understanding, right? And so I guess in that word accessible, a lot is implied, and this is what may be implied.
I just want to share one story so recently somebody observed a class of mine, and later she was telling me that the topic I covered could have been covered in half the time in any other school. And then she said that it wasn't because I was being inefficient. She said it was because I was ensuring that everyone in class mastered that, again to the extent possible. And she also said it's even those who seemed to have got it quickly benefited from that extra time. Yeah, so maybe this is one of the trade-offs. This is one idea of choices.
Yeah, so just to emphasize that you are including the fact that children will have limits in their learning, and it's not just a matter of finding the right tools and motivating all children to the same level. But when I see the child, I must see a potential to learn, and I must address that.
Yeah.
Now another thought comes to my mind. So can we try to expand this definition of learn to the potential to learn beyond knowledge and skills, almost like learning for one's overall well-being. So, and what could that mean? Learning for one's overall well-being.
And being child-centered in that broader sense,
Yeah.
right? And actually, this is one way of looking at child-centric that really excites me, because it's saying that we respect each child as a learner, right? By respect, I mean we listen, we take what they say with the right amount of seriousness, we don't talk down to them, and a learner in a holistic way, not only in the academic. Yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah, I think the culture of our school is one of having a regard for children and a kind of unconditional regard.
Yeah.
It doesn't depend on that child being good child or good at some particular skill. We have respect and affection for all children automatically, and it's not about praising children and building their egos. I think we are not doing that.
Yeah. If we could summarize this, I would say in a school community that practices child-centered education, children are not seen as incomplete beings. No? Fundamentally, spiritually, children and adults are equal. I mean, we are on the same page. Of course, the children know less and they are more immature in many ways, but in a very deep sense, we are on the same page. And when I put it like this, I feel this whole tension between adult-centered and child-centered, it just goes away.
But this shouldn't mean that we cannot challenge their behavior or make different demands on them.
Not at all.
That may be necessary.
But there is a strong and continual message from the adults that each of us is a child of the universe, and we don't need any justification to be alive or to be present. Yeah, that is a nice way to approach child-centered, I would say.
Right, yeah.
But can child-centered education address the question of passivity and resistance in learning? How can we go into that?
Yeah, like I was thinking about it earlier, and what you had said at the beginning also, that children are being dragged through the education designed by adults, right? It's dictated by adults, and this may create some dichotomy between autonomy and passivity, right? So yeah, we should examine that. Yeah, and maybe one reason why parents and educators are worried about adult-driven curricula is that it makes students passive in school, and to ensure more involvement from students, we say that curriculum should be child-centered. Yeah.
So, why are students passive at school? I think people would traditionally say that the knowledge they learn is fragmented, it's unconnected to their lives, it's disconnected to their lives, so they don't feel ownership of it. Also, students are motivated by external rewards and not by the excitement of what they learn, so that itself is another alienating factor so they don't feel an ownership of their curriculum.
So this autonomy and I mean engagement or resistance, is this why, for example, I would have planned a really rich and exciting class, some experience, and I'm there and I'm fully there, and then suddenly two of them will start yawning and I just feel, what happened? Right? This was supposed to be so much fun. I did it for you, but is it the problem that I did it? That's why.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about it earlier, and we questioned the choice aspect of autonomy. But I mean, one model is that if there is autonomy, there will be engagement. But then, what is autonomy actually? And what if it's synonymous with feeling engaged or being engaged with what's being communicated or shared in that space?
You mean, okay, you're saying it's not let's get autonomy in place, then we'll get engagement. You're saying this autonomy may be just like a unicorn and there's just engagement. When we see it, we say, I mean, we can call it autonomy if we wish, right? I think that if a child or even an adult for that matter were curious about why I resist, that might be a way to go. Just being curious about why am I resisting something.
That is a curious idea.
No, I mean, okay, first let me put aside one thing which may be a confusion. Resistance is necessary in a hostile environment or in an unreasonable environment, right? If a school is doing unreasonable or violent things, resistance is good. But I'm saying in a benign environment, even there's this voice, no, that's going, I prefer this, I don't like that, I want to do A, I don't want to do B.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, what's it based on? Right? That whole tendency to prefer, that may be a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, we can see this clearly in children many times, but maybe not very clearly in ourselves. This being driven by our preferences, by our pleasure seeking, right? And therefore resisting whatever is not pleasurable or what is not our preference. And be jackfruit, washing dishes, or mathematics, anything. It goes from there. So are we then suggesting that this inner voice that tells us what to do, what not to do, is something that may be preventing engagement?
I'm just wondering if we could notice that inner voice, if we could hear it sometimes in a slightly detached way, then maybe it would become quiet and we could give attention to the task at hand, to whatever is in front of me. What prevents me?
So learning to engage with tasks brings its own autonomy and meaning and participation, I think. And this is interesting because we don't now have to entertain children in order to persuade them to learn. I feel we can help them and us see that there is a richness in daily living and daily learning. And if we participate in it without resistance, then something interesting can happen there.
Yeah. And I mean, in this case, I have also seen that then whose decision it is to, I mean, who decides what should be done in the classroom or in the group space becomes irrelevant, right? Because people may be involved in either case, or if someone is not involved in both cases, let's say I decide something and then the student decides something, but in both those cases there's a child who's resisting or not involved. It seems like there's something other than choosing what I want to do that's coming into the way. And yeah, I think that's interesting, maybe even to think about. Maybe if you could watch that, something else could come up. Yeah, thanks. I think it was nice to have this conversation with the bamboo at the back. I think we can stop for today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we hope you could hear that and follow some of it. We're happy to take questions or respond to comments that you have.
You can just send the questions in chat.
Okay.
Just read it out.
No, need to say it's very clear. We don't have a backup plan if there are no questions. So we'll just wait for a while, and if there are any questions, we can discuss them. Okay, thank you. Srinivas, very enriching to listen to.
Thank you.
And if some of you want, you could turn on your video so you could also see people on the other side of the screen.
So one thing is, we actually packed a lot of ideas into this video, and we went through many iterations of planning this conversation. So, and in fact, as I was listening, I was picking up new threads from what my colleagues said. So that itself was interesting. So the question is it possible to, this is from Elena, is it possible to decide how much to teach a child?
Do you mean in a particular session? I'm just trying to understand the scope of the question. Yeah? In a particular class, you mean like when do you stop? Yeah, it's true that in a particular class, different children reach that point of I'm full at different times. Yeah, and one has to be sensitive to give breaks at that time. Yeah, we do say, would you like to go to have a glass of water, wash your face, come back? Not sure if I understood the question.
Okay, we're getting another question. May I get some more thoughts on autonomy and making them engaged?
Yeah, Rhythm, why you were the one speaking about that in the video, so why don't you? There are some other questions, so we'll take them up. Yeah. Also, Dharmaraj is asking, you spoke about autonomy and agency. How do they relate to the theme of today's discussion? Is autonomy more important than agency or the other way around? So the two questions seem to be about the relationship between autonomy, agency, and engagement. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we were just trying to explore it in the way that there's no, I mean, maybe a sense of autonomy or feeling that I'm a participant in this endeavor comes from being engaged, rather than having this sense of I have decided what to do, and now it is up to me whether to do this or not. And so maybe that sense of feeling engaged, participative in whatever is happening does not come from choosing, but just this feeling that this is interesting to me, I'm curious about this. Maybe it's from there that it comes.
I feel like we've been hearing a lot about how the condition for being engaged is to have chosen or made a conscious decision to engage. And I think we are questioning that. Is it, and we see it in our classes, children don't seem to have that rule that it has to be my question, my decision, my choice before I will engage. This is something we've seen for so many years. It's coming from there.
The other thread we were trying to explore in the video is that I think we can all recognize that through the day we have, I think we referred to it also, that this voice saying, I don't want to do this, I want to do this. Why should I be doing this now? I want to be doing something else, etc. So paying attention to that voice itself is a way of learning about how to engage in any situation. And again, not hostile situations, but just simple everyday situations. There's so much feeling of it. I don't need this right now, to explore that voice, to pay attention to it as a form of engagement. There's some other question.
There's a question from Kamini. I'll just read it out. So there was mention of how we would teach children from different backgrounds differently. For example, Adivasi children. But how can we take the call that they shouldn't be exposed to literature or science because they don't seem to need it in their lives at the moment? I hope I'm making sense. Yes, you're making complete sense. And this is a very, very fraught question. And we don't have any idea of the right answer to this question. And I agree with you. Who are we to take the call of what they should or shouldn't be exposed to? I think one theme in child-centered education has been this, though. Is a nationalized curriculum one for all? Is it appropriate? And in that debate, you hear questions like this coming up. Like if you have children in so many different contexts, shouldn't they be learning what's around them, what is valued in their culture and in their family? Shouldn't it be that rather than some alien curriculum? So the question comes from there, but you're absolutely right. Who makes that decision? Don't know.
Or even the issue of language, or which language should children be taught in, children from different backgrounds. I think that also comes into this. Like the state language or English being in some ways excluding the mother tongue of other children.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very subtle question also. And I'm thinking somehow, this whole question of how power functions in society. When will we ever reach a point where that itself is, within school children are thinking about that within their own curricula? Like, can that be part of the way in which our young people learn? That would be quite amazing, and it might lead to some different outcomes. We can't say. There are several other questions. Sorry, we're just.
Don't think we looked
How
at
we can
this
support.
one. Okay, there are many questions now. It's taken away all our fears about no question.
Can you provide insight into the freedom model? How do we balance between
Just read the
autonomy?
question.
The question is, can you please provide more insight into the freedom model? This was from Yogendra. How do we balance between autonomy, freedom, and what we think is good for the child? I think we touched on this earlier. You want to take it?
Yeah, so I think the idea of a free school is, in general, from what I understand, I would call it narrowly defined to what the child feels like doing at that moment or that day. Autonomy is something different. Autonomy is a feeling in the child that they're not being pushed around, like just dragged through, right? So that's another, it's the different from freedom, I think, in that sense. And the third thing?
What we think is good for the child.
What we think is good for them. Yeah, I think as teachers, this what I think is good for you keeps coming up on a moment-to-moment basis. It comes at every level of being a teacher, from planning the year to planning the term to planning the day. I think this is good for you. It is something that I have to watch out for in myself, because it's not that it's completely invalid, no, but at times it could mean that I'm blind to what the child is going through at the moment, or I'm not listening or looking actually. I'm not observing the child. I'm just thinking this is good for you. But this is a risk at every level, I want to say, even in the moment to moment.
Yeah. Anyway, we are just touching on various threads. I'll read the question clearly. This is from Sita Lakshmi. I was wondering how we can support students to get excited for learning and to find joy in the entire learning process without rewarding, when the external environment is rewarding in so many ways. I'll just read that again. I was wondering how we can support students to get excited for learning or find joy in the learning process without rewarding, when the external environment is rewarding in so many ways. Yeah, that's the art of the whole thing. I mean, I don't think there is a way to do it, but you know, our school is based on J. Krishnamurthy's questions and so on, and he's a very subtle thinker. And one of the things is that this whole sense of, you know, our daily emotional lives, like what we are motivated by, what we find joy in, what we find pain in, what we resist. So the suggestion being made is this is a field to explore. It's not something that is just taken for granted. Like video games give me pleasure, calculus gives me pain, and then that's it. I just sort of go with that way of thinking and feeling. But it's a whole field to be explored as much as any other field. And we have to enter that field somehow. Like a child, I mean, forget children, even adults, we have to learn in ourselves how and why we are motivated by external rewards, without saying, oh, it's bad to be motivated by external rewards. It's good to be self-motivated. Without all that, just seeing first what happens in us. And maybe that seeing, if patiently and deeply carried out, will show something to us about the way in which we are approaching daily living and daily learning and daily working and daily relating. So there's no answer. I'm afraid there's no answer to that question. But to what depth can we take that exploration? That might be an interesting.
And maybe like in some ways, even asking here that what would it mean to do something without a motive at all? I don't know. Just to look at that in some ways. Because then if you're internally motivated, then is it for the joy or the challenge that's being offered that drives you to do something? It's again some kind of reward. So is there an action in which there's no reward that's driving us? Or yeah, I think that would be interesting to explore with children and teachers and adults, other adults in the space.
I think each of these questions can be a webinar in itself. All of the questions so far. For instance, the next one, again from Elena, about resistance and the inner voice and such thoughts. How do you help a child see it? Yeah, so going to say.
So at school we have many spaces, semi-formal spaces where it's explicitly set up to talk about these things and to uncover these things in ourselves. And it's actually not at all difficult for a child to hear, to become aware of these and share it. They are very, very perceptive and insightful at all ages, I would say. So you just need to make a space for it and need to be vulnerable yourself in that space and to say that, this is something that happens to me, and they immediately come out with it. So we talk about it. That's really the only tool we have, is to talk about it. And sometimes we say, okay, so during the week, why don't you just look out for instances of this and see if it happens to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very interesting how it could happen. I mean, I don't know, this keeps coming back to me because like the other day there's a child who had left the tap on. She didn't realize for some time, and then she suddenly looked at it and realized, oh, I left the tap on. So I don't know what drove her to see that this is what she was doing, but there's something in that. It's as if you're sleeping and then you suddenly wake up to what's going on. And I mean, I don't know if I can make that happen for a child or for myself, but it's almost like a mystery. Yeah, we have alarm clocks to wake up, but I don't know if they're very efficient always.
I think if we're not judgmental, so if you take like we clean spaces in the mornings, and nobody, to be honest, nobody really loves that job. So that inner voice is quite loud in me and in everyone in my cleaning area. But because I'm not going to judge a child for saying, do I have to do this? That's the inner voice, right? I don't judge. I say, yeah, you have to do it. I'm also not really enjoying it. Sometimes I may say, but let's do it. Let's try and have fun. If we're not judging it, then it comes out. Then they can hear it.
Okay, Navneet was asked a question. We say that a school such as CFL is benign. However, who decides what is benign? For a child, the environment may still be not benign.
Yes.
Can you share some perspectives on how resistance can be an indicator of an environment and how the child actually experiences it? So the way I'm understanding this is, if a child is resisting even a so-called benign environment, is that an indicator that, is that something to watch out for?
No, for sure. Like you can imagine a CFL student listening to this and saying, but I don't feel like this. I don't feel not judged, or I don't feel free to yeah, of course there would be.
But you know, it's not about a protected environment like a school, but in daily life, you know, people will be judging us. There will be work that needs to be done. We will be facing some hostile environment, either politically or personally. I mean, this is what is going to happen, whether we like it or not. So
you're saying we're not benign, we're not setting up to be benign.
Yeah, it's not like we're setting up there is no space where we can guarantee that everyone will feel absolutely safe. It's just not possible, because so many things go through our minds, and so many memories, or so many factors. So a school that is just protecting, I mean, not that we should endanger children, but I don't think the point is to just make a benign environment, because when the child goes into the family or into work or college or whatever, there's so many things that are going to come, and the child is going to process that. And then the question is, how is that processing happening? Right?
Yeah.
How is the processing to learning happening? How is the processing to resistance happening? How is the processing to hostility, fear, aggression, the whole spectrum of human experience? What is the child bringing to all of that? You know, I think that's the environment. That's the trigger to this whole endeavor, I say.
And I think we should just make it very clear. If we say that a school is child-centered, like a parent would come to a child-centered school, why? Possibly because they want their child to be happy. No parent will say, you know, that's not important. But I don't think that child-centered equals happy all the time. I mean, I can tell you for sure it's not. So that I don't know if that means the school is not a benign atmosphere, or it is, or it isn't. It's just the nature of the human psyche to be unhappy, to experience resistance, to feel distant and alienated at times. That is not prevented in a child-centered school.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of questions. Parajita, the question is based on the interesting discussion on the freedom model. Excuse me. Considering the child as the chooser, will the education of a particular child have to adjust based on the shift in their choices? and how to handle such a shift in the choices. I think that is one major flaw in this freedom model that we were trying to discuss. That. And as Kamla was saying in the video, that absolute pure chooser who we think will make the intelligent choices based on her own interests and all that. That chooser herself has been created by so many social forces like the media or by education or by religion or whatever. And then this chooser is supposed to be very pure and intelligent and make a good choice. And then everyone has to adjust madly to accommodate that choice. And then, like you say, that next day or next week or next month, the choice will change and then go back to square one. Sorry, Rhythm, you were saying something?
No, it's, yeah, but it ties to the question of, doing something for rewards or flickering interests and inclinations. It's, I'm sure there are some engagements where at a point you feel like, oh, it's not interesting anymore, but you have to work through it. So you pass that kind of gap in learning, or so just to allow the flickering interests of a child to dominate the educational space doesn't really make sense in all aspects of that endeavor.
Okay, the next, we have a lot of questions. Okay, this is from Vijay Anand. Balancing the pull between what is good for the student, for example, going on a dangerous branch of a tree and giving them autonomy, it's like balancing on a knife's edge. Does the responsibility of the teacher as someone taking care of them come in the way?
Just can you read it again?
Balancing the pull between what is good for the student and giving them autonomy. Meaning,
yes,
it's like balancing on the knife's edge.
yes.
Does the responsibility of the teacher as someone taking care of them come in the way? I think, do you mean that
as a kind of fear?
Yeah, like we are interfering with their natural intelligence to make a good choice. Like, because I am afraid that the child will fall.
I mean, it's true, we feel this as teachers because these are other people's children. As a parent, it's a different, you can do it differently, and as a teacher, maybe it is different. I think,
I think if physical security comes in, you do have to be careful.
But one is taking calls like this, it's true. And it varies, that what you call that threshold of what do I allow this child to do and what do I say, no, now it's not good. That varies from person to person. And yeah, it's a very interesting phenomenon.
As I said, each of these questions, we can talk for hours actually. Okay. Sugirtha, I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I am a mother of a teenager and I think some form of physical activity is necessary for her. And there is a lot of resistance from her side. How do we handle it? Well, I think basically how to handle resistance when the resistance is stemming out from laziness and not willingness to come out of the comfort zone. I do not believe in forcing, but what to do.
Oh, it's a good question. Rhythm, who takes sports at school?
Many resistant teenagers.
Sometimes it's just like, it doesn't matter what you feel like, let's carry on. That's one approach. Sometimes you try different sports and something clicks. In these cases, I think even understanding the implications of what they're doing on their own physical health in the long term, that may, they may see the necessity of it. But yeah. Because I believe that for every person, it is possible to enjoy exertion in the body. Okay. So how do you get the child to that point where they can access that enjoyment? I feel that's universal. Well, I mean, there's something in the game also that's interesting. Now, just the challenge of it at points, and some ways we do like challenges, and then solving them gives some pleasure or some enjoyment. So that's one way. So I think different engagements, but generally I think most children, even if when they're young, they do enjoy it. Might be these are I think the difficulty is, like, if I'm not doing this, I could do something else. That comes into the way. Like I could maybe be on my device, or I could read a book. Yeah, and that's the bit that kind of takes away from this possibility of feeling this enjoyment in physical exertion. And yeah, it might also be a cause of our sedentary lifestyle and just moving around, even on the land, while working on the land. Some students do not want to do because it's also uncomfortable. Some work that you do is not, but yeah, it exerts the body. I mean, this is a tough question. You just keep trying different things with them, and something may click. Or
Right. I think maybe it's because you're a parent, I'm saying maybe not getting locked into a battle, because sometimes as the adult, I also get locked in that. That is my main aim in life, is to get you to do exercise. So if you, maybe we also back off sometimes a bit.
And I think having a group or other people to do it with also helps, instead of motivating yourself to do it alone. So that's another. Yeah, Vijay, we understood what you meant. Yeah, not going on a dangerous.
But this business about exercise, it's not only exercise actually.
Yeah.
It is everything.
Correct.
Because if you don't, like we notice in our school, if we, no prizes and no exams and all that. And it's not easy for kids to learn. It's like some kids are very excited by learning some math or reading a poem or whatever. It's not only exercise, it's our whole way of thinking that's being geared towards, I will learn if you give me this. And if you take away that reward, then it is not clear why we learn. It's a very deep mystery, I would say. And that's what we're trying to explore with our kids, like, okay, you are not going to get a chocolate. You're not going to get 5-star. You're not going to be the class topper.
No gold medal.
Will you learn this lovely math geometry theorem? And many kids may say, no, not, okay, I'll do it if you want me to.
I think most of them, they learn because, what did you say? What? They learn because it's fun to understand.
Yeah.
Understanding is a kick, right? So it's like a chocolate in that way.
Yeah.
So that's why we said at the end that if I am looking at each child as being capable of understanding something and getting that enjoyment of understanding, then I can keep them all engaged in class, because everyone's just, think, oh, wow, I got that. That feels nice to understand.
So, sorry, we'll move on. Anand is asking quite complex question, which I think I'll summarize by saying that you've said that if a child chooses, it's based on some form of social conditioning and there's no pure chooser. And then he's asking, what would happen if there could be a model where children sit together, discuss, and then decide what they want to learn and stick to the plan?
Yeah. This we do. We do this within our general overall plan for the year. That's a very nice thing that can happen.
But it is not free of the earlier point, though. It still is coming from the same ground, I think. But it teaches many valuable things like cooperating, listening to others.
Even realizing that, like, I like this, and I'm just enveloped by my I like this, and then I hear several I like something else. You realize something very good.
No, that's a great thing. Yeah. 9 new messages. Wow. Raju's asking, when I hear benign, in addition to safety, I think of not being judged in that space. Yeah, I was thinking that when will we realize that while I am busy judging everyone, I want a safe space where I will not be judged by anyone. And that is also a discovery that kids make, I think, in our context, that many children demand a safe space. I will not say something because others will judge me. But meanwhile, this child is like brimming over with judgments of everyone else, as we are as adults also. To learn about that is quite interesting. Yoginder, thank you. You have to communicate one central idea for child-centered education. What would it be? Sorry, we're trying to figure out the question.
Sorry, what was just say that again?
If you had to communicate one central idea for child-centered education, what would it be? You want to
I think it's like something we came upon together, and what we were talking about is trying to make learning accessible and enjoyable for each and every child in our care. And that could take on many forms, I guess, by making sure that they're all taking something from that classroom. So I think for us that would be central. But the other thing is, well, like what we were trying to say, it's not centered in that way around the child. It's more like centered around learning. It's learning centered. Like some of our colleagues may use that phrase. So yeah, because like we communicated earlier, we're a bit uncomfortable by putting a human being in the center of everything, because that may have its own problems. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, we missed some questions because
Yeah,
we are juggling two documents.
There were several questions.
Something here. Vasudha?
Yeah. So the question is, you shared a fascinating thought. There is richness in daily living and daily learning. Sorry, just one thing. Suppose we miss any question and you would like to have a dialogue on it, you can go to our website. There's some way of contacting us through email and so on, and we can set something up. Just in the interest of time, I'm just. Okay, you shared a fascinating question. There is a richness in daily living and daily learning that we can help children see. In a class of 30+ children, how do we organize and create curiosity about daily living? We have tried to include some activities and it didn't work. Okay, so the question is about how to nurture fascination in large. You want to see? We were discussing this.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. This question is often asked to us, and I often fall into the trap of trying to fix the problem with larger numbers. But there's a reason why we have remained small. So I'm not able to dismiss the difficulty that you would have, that you're facing. I think it's real. With a 30+ strong class, it is going to be difficult to do some of these things. And since I have not done it, I really don't have any wisdom to share. But I just hope that if I, as the adult in that space, have this in my mind, won't I find some way to bring it in? Won't I do something that's appropriate to my context? So that's the way initially I would try to fix the problem with 30 and say make groups, and actually it doesn't work like that. For you in your context, it will be something that you will figure out.
Yeah. Also, it may not work in the sense just because we have 5 kids in a class, this richness approach is not necessarily working because resistance and all is strong, right? So even for you, it may not work, but you never know what seed will get planted where and what window may open somewhere.
Yeah. There's a question from Priyanshu. How much should the child-centric educational system prepare the child for the economic system outside? I mean, what if the child is completely unprepared for competition, which has become a fundamental necessity in today's world because of the environment at child-centric schools? Yeah. It's a good question that we get asked a lot.
So, see, this is a very complex thing. Just because we have removed exams and competition in our small school doesn't mean that children and adults are not competitive, right? There seems to be something very primal in us which wants to, outdo other people. And come out on top and so on. So that is actually the interesting question. If we, to me, actually, whether we do competitive structures or not is the more, like exams and all, is the more trivial problem in a way. The basic thing seems to be human beings have structured, 8 billion people have structured the planet in this way. Why is that happening? Right? What is it in us that wants to filter people in this way, assess people in this way, create economic systems in this way? This is not the only option for human beings, right? And historically, I don't know too much about it, but this has not been the only way human beings can filter that. So unless, I don't know how to do it, but at a very fundamental level, which is our small attempt in this whole thing, we have to, I think, reverse the question, not how will my child fit into this so-called competitive world when he has not done exams for 10 years, but, what is this we have created?
How do I reject it as an adult? How do I reject that world actually? Is it possible as an adult? I could turn the question around to the adult. But in a very mundane answer to the question is, people are very adaptable. When they leave a child-centric school, they adapt. When they encounter competition, they largely adapt.
Yeah.
And there are many children in competitive schools who don't adapt. So that is, you know what I mean? Yeah.
No, actually, the last.
No, in the sense that, as you say, the world is built around competition. I would say that even children who have been taught to be competitive through their life aren't necessarily coping intelligently with the world.
Yeah.
It is very, very stressful, even if you've practiced competition for 12 years of school.
Yeah. Another webinar topic, right? Prayag is asking, in your experience, what is the role of dialogue in child-friendly education? How does it work in a school like CFL? So what is the role of dialogue in child-friendly education, and how does it work in a school like CFL? You want to go to
Yeah, I mean, so again, in this way, if I would use the term child-centered perhaps differently, then it's not located in one child, but let's say it's the whole of human consciousness playing out in different ways in our lives. And then through dialogue, that is at the center. By that being at the center, I mean we're investigating that. We're looking into how it plays out, what it means in our everyday activities, in our interactions with each other, with subjects, with with people in general, and the world outside, different social norms. And I think all that is out in the open. It's possible to talk about all that simply at one level, and to see if things can be changed, if the human consciousness can be transformed with all its pain and sorrow, flickering pleasures and joys. But is that all there is? So I think that would be the role of, I don't know the role, but that would be the possibilities dialogue offers in our school and in every other space where it's taken up in this manner, I suppose. So just to link it back to what a child-friendly education or a child-centered education may mean in relation to dialogue and those kind of investigations. To add something.
There's a question from Harsh. If a child is overwhelmed by circumstances, is there a relief valve that will help them return to the present? Once pressure is relieved, can exploration directed at a given understanding goal in groups be the fun in academics? The group can have autonomy on how they choose to explore. I think the first part of the question is, it is true that children who are overwhelmed by circumstances, they're highly constrained, no? The mind becomes quite narrow. So we can talk about that.
Yeah.
There is distress in children, and how we, no, go ahead. How we would.
No, it's difficult to preach in such circumstances. I mean, whatever the child or the family is going through is they are going
Right.
through.
Mm.
And so it's difficult to talk on behalf of that person. I guess if we can create an environment where we are inviting an exploration of who we are and what is happening in us at any moment, then that invitation can go very, very deep, whatever, stressful life circumstances people are facing.
Mm.
So unfortunately, it's not something that a curriculum, I mean, we can talk and say, why are you stressed? What is the difficulty and so on. But that will go up to a certain level.
Mm.
But at some point, if the invitation is repeatedly there, like to look at oneself or to understand oneself, then maybe even in a very difficult circumstance, that might help in an individual's life spontaneously by themselves.
I'm thinking that when you're trying to comfort a child who's feeling overwhelmed, at that moment, actually what they want is to be the center of your attention, the center of your world. They want complete sympathy and understanding. They don't really want to be challenged at that point. And what they are feeling may or may not be completely reasonable, and you may feel like pointing that out. But yeah, it's quite a challenge as the adult at that moment, not to indulge, at the same time to listen. It's really difficult, but it's something that we try to do.
Because there's a story being built up at that point. This is me, I am suffering in this way. And to ask a question of that story is very, very delicate and difficult, I would say. Yeah. Viral. Wow. How can we help children unlearn the generalized discriminations that are embedded in their minds about upper class, lower class, and much more?
That's what dialogue would.
Yeah, why didn't you?
I think there are a lot of, like you say, discriminations embedded in the mind. And the only way we can think of to learn about it is to talk about it, to uncover it, like we were saying, in dialogue spaces. And then also in the interactions that we can arrange for them. Like we do take them outside school, we meet different kinds of people, we talk as far as possible to different kinds of people. And it's not so much unlearn as become aware, even first of all, that I have this thought and opinion and it is discriminatory, even to understand that. Yeah, because a lot of it is, like I've said before, a lot of it is innocent. They don't really mean it like an adult might. They're just reflecting what they're hearing around them. No?
Yeah, I mean, though it would be nice to speak more about it, but this fundamental distinction that most of us seem to have between what is mine and what is not mine, or what is me and what is not me, that immediate distance that's created between us and the world, I think that is something that we definitely try to explore with them. What breaks that distinction is I think very interesting, something that's of interest to us. When the moments when this distance is absent, where it doesn't matter who you are, what your class is, your gender is, and there's that distance is not there between people, even whether you're a human being or not, that distance is not there. That to explore that through our educational endeavor would be central in some ways.
Yeah. So there's a question from Priyanshu. You mentioned about choices coming without any conditioning would be better, but can a choice ever be made without some influence of the other? I'll just repeat. You mentioned about choices coming without any conditioning would be better, but can a choice ever be made without some influence of the other? So this is a very, very subtle question, I think. I don't know whether the suggestion is that we can make a choice without an influence, but we tend to assume that our choices are coming from a source of autonomy and
Some core,
some real me making an authentic choice. And that I think can come under great skepticism from all human beings, because we are all massively shaped by our environment, by our genetics and so on. So I don't think it's a matter of making a choice without having an influence, but more a matter of understanding that who I am is itself an influence. Like I don't exist other than the influences that make me up. And that is why society and the human being are reflecting each other in this way constantly. All the prejudices mentioned in the earlier question are embedded here, and then they come out and express themselves in some way. So this is a very subtle question, and actually many thinkers, and Krishnamurti has spent a lot of energy on this, because I somehow, this also makes me different from you, which is what Ruben was saying. Like, I feel I am really different from you because I eat this food, you eat that food, or I worship this God and you, whatever it is, you know, I feel different from you. And that is our deepest illusion. And this is a subject of another webinar series, actually. Sorry. But
I also wanted to say that we think like the choice seems to be the end of the story, like, and then I made this choice. But what if we looked at, you make a choice, it doesn't matter what it's based on, and then you don't attach yourself to that particular choice after that. Like, don't identify, I made that choice, therefore you justify it further and you make it better than any other choice. But you just make a choice, and then it's after that, that's really interesting, how you engage. Again, it's about engagement, right? I like, even when I go to a restaurant and I'm torn between two desserts, and then this happens even there. The minute I choose one, I think I should have chosen the other, or I choose this because it's more healthy. That's all nonsense. Actually, it's actually figuring out that the choice is based on nothing very, very deep is very valuable.
Just to say that, or to say what Venko was saying earlier, we may be running out of time. So if there are some questions we've not been able to address, or there are some questions that we've not been able to answer, there's always a possibility to get in touch. We're open to visitors, and to continue these conversations in some ways. We would think that, and to spread these ideas in the educational world would be nice.
And I just want to remind that we are having 2 more webinars at least in this series too. One of them is about dialogue, so we hope you will come and maybe we can open up questions about dialogue more in that one.
Yeah. So there's some more. Should we try to answer some more?
Yeah, sure.
Some you want to look there.
there's a lot of questions. Sorry, I just
Okay, there's one called What is Real Freedom by Mihir Pathak. I don't.
just, yeah, I mean, another, what can I mean, the issue seems to be that a word like freedom evokes so many different responses. Like, some of us are thinking political freedom. Some of us are thinking economic or, freedom, or emotional freedom. I must express whatever I want now and no one can stop me. Or it could be a crude sense of, I want to do what I want to do. Don't mess with that feeling. Could be that. So I don't know. I mean, these are all definitions. So I don't know how to get into this question, except to maybe we can try and understand, like, we often feel unfree in daily living, like we have repetitive thoughts and feelings, or we feel the urge to fulfill ourselves in certain ways repetitively. And then there's a feeling of lack in that. Or we want something to happen which doesn't happen, and therefore we feel unfree and feel that if only that happened, then I would be okay. So I guess rather than the question of what is real freedom, I would ask, how can we explore all these movements in us, which seem to box us in so many different ways? Either
A question like this we would talk to the kids about it over several sessions, and it's very interesting what comes up and what can be shared. Yeah, one of the children had come up with the analogy. So there's a box in which you are in, and then you're free to choose whatever is in that box. Now, is that really freedom, or you're limited by the box?
And then she said, and you put that box in another big box. And if you break the small box, you don't even know that you're in another big box.
So,
yeah. I mean, it's a very fascinating question, but we need to tease out the layers in it. I think maybe we should wind up with this 10:20, 11:26. We just wanted to share
some things before we start.
yeah, Guru, those two website links, do you think you could share on the chat? So basically, if you'd like any more information about the school, you can go to cfl.in.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I can't hear Guru's status. Yeah, so for more information about CFL, please visit cfl.in. If you're interested in working at CFL, cfl.in/working-at-CFL. So we're sorry that we couldn't take up all questions and comments, but
we've saved them.
yeah.
I think it will be very enriching for us to look at all your questions slowly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all. That was very enjoyable.
Thank you for joining.
Please do see if you can come for our future webinars as well. Yeah.